Imagine this. The United States is barely 2 decades old, still finding its footing on the world stage, when suddenly it's dragged into one of the most scandalous diplomatic crises of the 18th century. It involved spies with mysterious names, shocking demands for bribes, public outrage, and the very real possibility of war with one of America's oldest allies. This was the XYZ Affair, the French-American connection. To understand how it all began, we need to rewind to 1778. During the Revolutionary War, the young United States struck an alliance with France. For the French, this wasn't just about liberty. It was about revenge. Britain was their old enemy, and humiliating them on American soil was an opportunity too good to miss. French support was critical for American independence. They sent weapons, uniforms, troops, and even warships. At Yorktown, French forces helped secure the decisive victory that ended the war. Americans, in turn, felt deep gratitude toward their brothers in arms. But France paid a steep price. The war effort pushed the already fragile French economy further into debt, and that financial pressure boiled over into the French Revolution in 1789. At first, many Americans celebrated. France, too, seemed to be embracing liberty. Thomas Jefferson even described the French Republic as our younger sister. But then came the darker side of the Revolution: the September massacres, the execution of King Louis XVI, and the Reign of Terror, with Paris awash in blood. France declared war on Europe, raising massive citizen armies. American enthusiasm split down the middle. The Federalists, led by figures like President John Adams and Alexander Hamilton, were horrified. They saw chaos and mob rule and wanted to distance America from France, drawing closer instead to Great Britain. Meanwhile, the Democratic-Republicans, led by Jefferson, still sympathized with France. They argued that some violence was simply the price of freedom. This political divide at home set the stage for the crisis to come. Washington's Neutrality and the Jay Treaty. President George Washington, keenly aware of America's weakness, wanted no part in France's wars. In 1793, he issued a proclamation of neutrality, promising that the United States would stay out of Europe's conflicts. But neutrality was harder than it sounded. Britain, still hostile toward its former colonies, harassed American shipping. To smooth things over, Washington sent John Jay to negotiate a treaty. The Jay Treaty of 1795 secured better trade relations with Britain, but it outraged the French, who saw it as a betrayal of the 1778 alliance. To them, it looked like the United States had sided with Britain. In retaliation, French privateers began attacking American merchant ships, seizing cargo, and even torturing captains. By 1797, nearly 300 American vessels had been taken. The diplomatic relationship was unraveling fast. Adams' steps in when John Adams became president in March 1797, he inherited this storm. He wasn't eager for war, but he wasn't about to let France bully America either. On May 16, 1797, Adams addressed Congress. He admitted France had inflicted a wound in the American breast, but insisted diplomacy must come first. Still, he warned the nation should prepare for war in case talks failed. To handle the delicate mission, Adams appointed 3 envoys: Charles Cotesworth Pinckney, already in France and a tough Federalist; John Marshall, a skilled lawyer from Virginia; and Elbridge Gerry, a respected signer of the Declaration of Independence. Their task: convince France to stop attacking American ships and respect U.S. neutrality. Enter X, Y, and Z. The envoys arrived in Paris in October 1797. They hoped to meet Foreign Minister Charles Maurice de Talleyrand, a cunning and infamous survivor of the Revolution. Instead, they were met by 3 shadowy intermediaries: later codenamed X, Y, and Z in official reports. These agents had shocking demands. Before any negotiations could begin, the Americans must apologize for President Adams's critical speech about France, pay Talleyrand a personal bribe of $250,000, and provide France with a loan of $10 million. In short, pay up or get lost. The Americans were furious. Pinckney reportedly shouted, "No, no, not a sixpence," when asked for money. They flatly refused. For months, the French agents stalled, pressured, and threatened. At one point, they warned that any nation not actively supporting France was an enemy. But the Americans held their ground. By spring 1798, Marshall and Pinckney gave up and sailed home, while Gerry stayed behind in a last, futile attempt at diplomacy. America reacts. When the news reached Adams in March 1798, he initially kept the details secret, worried they would inflame public anger. But Democratic Republicans in Congress demanded to see the envoy's reports, hoping they might prove France had been reasonable. Adams finally released the documents in April, only with the agents' names replaced by the mysterious letters X, Y, and Z. The revelation was explosive. Americans were outraged that France had tried to extort them. Crowds cheered, millions for defense, but not a cent for tribute. Anti-French sentiment swept the nation. Federalists surged in popularity, while Jefferson's pro-French faction was left scrambling. John Marshall returned home to a hero's welcome, and patriotic demonstrations broke out across American cities. The Quasi-War Congress, now furious, authorized U.S. ships to attack French vessels. What followed was an undeclared naval war known as the Quasi-War, 1798–1800. American warships like the USS Constellation scored victories over French frigates in the Caribbean. Meanwhile, on the home front, the Federalists pushed through the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts, giving the government broad powers to suppress dissent. Yet, despite the anger, President Adams resisted a full declaration of war. Instead, in 1799, he sent another peace delegation. By then, France had changed. The corrupt Directory had been overthrown in Napoleon Bonaparte's coup of 18 Brumaire. Napoleon, as first consul, wanted stability and new opportunities, not another costly war. He quickly moved to end hostilities. The result was the Convention of 1800, which formally ended the Quasi-War and reset Franco-American relations. Just 3 years later, those renewed ties paved the way for the Louisiana Purchase. Legacy. The XYZ Affair was more than just a diplomatic scandal. It shaped early American politics, strengthened the military, and deepened partisan divisions between Federalists and Democratic-Republicans. It also proved that the young United States would not be pushed around by the great powers of Europe, even if it meant risking war. And though it's remembered today for its mysterious initials and fiery slogan, the XYZ Affair showed that, from its earliest days, American diplomacy was a high-stakes game played on a global stage. That's the story of the XYZ Affair: bribery, outrage, and the brink of war.